Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where our amazing team members will be sharing about the plug and play project that CVC at One has been working on. My name is Anwar Hijaz. I'm a political science faculty member at Saddleback College and a faculty mentor for CVC at One. I'm so looking forward to welcome you all here today. And before we get started, we want to share out a few announcements. So during this webinar, we will share a survey link for your feedback. The link will be posted in the chat around the 40-minute mark in the webinar. So if you could please stay on and fill out the survey, it really helps for CVC to improve for future programming. And we appreciate your time in completing it. And another thing to keep in mind is that while At One does provide badges for course completion, we do not offer badges for attending this webinar. However, if your institution requires proof of attendance for flex credit or professional advancement, please stay until the end, complete the survey, and request a copy of your responses via the Google form. This confirmation can serve as proof for your attendance. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it to our amazing presenters for them to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Xochitl Tirado. I am a CVC faculty mentor and a DE coordinator at Imperial Valley College. It is great to be here. I have been in education since 1999. I started in K-12 and then moved into the California Community College system a few years after. I'm also an English instructor at my college, and I've been DE coordinator. This is now my 9th year. And a few years with CVC. I can't remember how many now, but it's great to be here. I'll hand it over to Marilena.
Hello, my name is Maria Elena Fernandez, and I am the Distance Ed and Instructional Design Coordinator at College of the Siskiyous, and I'm a CVC faculty mentor assisting with POCR and the other projects that we're doing here. I've been in DE. I've been at my college since 1994. I've been in DE since 2002. I've been a DE coordinator since 2017, and I was former English faculty for decades. And so I'm really happy to be here.
Hello, I'm Ryan Hitch. I am a full-time instructional specialist in distance education at Chaffey College. I'm also our college's POCR lead. I've been here for 6 months, give or take. Prior to that, though, I was an English instructor at several community colleges in our local area, and have been working with the CVC on POCR for a while. I'm going to speak later on my experience in the plug and play pilot.
Thank you, Ryan. Prior to me turning it back over to Sochi and Maria Elena to go over to the presentation, my name is Garrett Grace, Director of Professional Development for CVC at One, coming on a year next month. So I've been with CVC at One for nearly a year now, and really excited to be working on this project. This project was one that started before I began with CVC at One, with a lot of partner organizations, and so really excited to actually bring this to fruition over the past few weeks. You may have seen the press releases, the memos go out statewide, and today we're really excited to be able to share kind of what this project entails, some more of the background on it. Something that is really unique about this project is that it's really hard to do wide-scale adoption of any sort of courses within our system, or any system for that matter. And so it hasn't been done in our system at this scale. And so really excited that we were able to bring this to the table. And so you'll hear all about it today. We've learned so much, and Sochi and Maria Elena will share all of the things we've learned throughout this project. And along with a lot of the partnerships that we've created working on this project, because when just like any project, when you start it, you think, oh yeah, this is very simple, just adapt that, move that around, done, finished. And then all of a sudden you get a couple weeks into it and you realize this is actually more like a 9-month project. We are building the entire house from scratch rather than just remodeling the living room furniture. So really excited for what this project has available for everybody today. And we're just learning and we're just growing with this. So these are the early wins, trials, tribulations that we've experienced. And so excited to be here today to share all of this exciting work with everybody. So thank you for that. Maria Elena, Sochi, take it away.
All right, thanks, Garrick. Okay, so as we present, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We will have time at the end to answer questions, and we will try to answer questions as we go through our presentation, but just drop them in there and we'll get to your questions. Okay, so let's talk about plug and play. So the goal for today's webinar is we're going to be sharing what plug and play is and why it matters. We want to explain the process and the goals behind this project. We're going to introduce available courses and what our upcoming plans are for this, for continuing this project. And you will hear from Ryan, who was one of our plug and play authors, and the experience that he had working through creating a course for plug and play. Okay, so let's start off with the goals that we had for this pilot. So one of the major goals was we wanted to provide courses for the system that could be easily adopted. So this project was not intended to create a model course for everyone to adopt. It was more to fill in a gap where we would have an emergency situation where we have a last minute hire or a new instructor that is new to online and was going to teach an online class for the very first time. So that is the intent of this plug and play pilot and really the project moving forward. We wanted to make sure that the courses that we were going to create for this were aligned to the CVC course design rubric. We also wanted to make sure that the courses use an OER so that there was no cost associated with the course. Again, easily adoptable for the faculty and then easy to put out there for our students to use, for our students to engage in. We wanted to make sure that the course provided equity-minded, accessible options and offer a foundation that the faculty that adopted this course could build upon. So the course is a complete course, but it is missing that personalization, of course, because those are the pieces that we removed from these courses. So there is an opportunity for that instructor that decides to adopt this course to make it their own, not only by adding their personal touches, as far as like, this is who your instructor is, this is, the college that you're attending, but also make it their own in changing, certain things that, they may want to personalize or present in a different way. But have it in a way that those things are easy to do, but also not required if sometimes we just don't have time as instructors, like we have to go and have that course ready. Okay, so what plug and play is? As I said, this is a pilot program to support faculty and students in an emergency situation. These are adoptable courses. They are created by California Community College faculty. So the courses that we have out right now, they have been created by instructors in our system that teach online that have had badged courses. So these courses were once badged by them, by their institution. The courses are meant to be a temporary, flexible solution to support faculty and students, as I mentioned before, for that kind of emergency situation or that new instructor that, is new to teaching online and wants to see what a course should look like, an online course. So the way we approach this is we decided to follow the Common Course Numbering course release. So the courses that are released right now are the courses that have that Common Course Numbering, that first phase. we had the plug and play authors align the courses to the CID. So we took the CID, gave it to these the instructors, and said like, okay, we have to make sure that the course content aligns to the CID of that course. And as I mentioned, they are aligned to the CVC course design rubric. OER based, and what we ask also is that this course follow a 16-week asynchronous online format. So I know that 16 weeks may not fit with everybody's schedule, especially if your college is like mine, that is really moving to like offering a lot of 8-week courses. But we just felt that 16 weeks gave the flexibility to, you know, if it needed to be an 8-week course, a 12-week course, it would be easy to adapt it. And if it had to be a few weeks longer, it would also be easy to adapt it to that. We just found that 16 weeks is the most common type of course or length of course that we offer across our system. So anyway, that's what plug and play is. All right, so let's talk about what plug and play is not. So it's not meant to be a mandate or a one-size-fits-all model course. It's not meant to replace any of your local course design templates or models or established practices. So working in POCR or CVC, I know that every college handles the way they create courses, the way that courses are put online, the way that courses are badged. Everyone handles that differently. The one thing that we do have in common, most colleges, is that we use the CVC course design rubric to make sure that those courses meet those standards. But the way we do it is it's really different everywhere. So this is not meant to replace any of those things. It's not an already badged course. I want to reiterate that because that is a question that we've received. So the course is designed using the CVC course design rubric, so it meets all of the criteria, but the course does not come with a badge. If your institution wants to badge the course, like if I adopt the course, if I want that course badge, then I would follow your college's process, whatever that is. These plug and play courses are not really intended for faculty who already have a well-developed, high-quality online course. So again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a course meant to fill a gap for either an emergency situation or for a new faculty. If you're an instructor that has been teaching online for a long time, that is very well-versed in course design, in the rubric, these courses are probably not for you. Again, they meet all of that criteria, but it's very I mean, you designed your course, you like what's in there, so these courses are probably not going to be a course that you would want to adopt. All right, so I will go ahead and hand it over to Marilena.
Okay, the pilot process. So this process was started in the fall of 24 with a call for faculty recruitment. So I sent an email out and asked for people, volunteers, instructors who had already badged courses, who were willing to participate or who wanted to participate in this project. That was during the fall. And then once we had our faculty courses, we had the kickoff meeting in the spring of 25. And sort of along the way, there were checkpoints for establishing course alignment, OER selections, accessibility, integration of other materials. And that occurred throughout the spring and the summer of 2025. So after that process of back and forth, making sure essential alignment occurred, we went ahead and published on the Canvas Commons in fall of 25. Also available, they're also there on the Plug and Play Adoptable course. Oh, thank you, Jim, for mentioning that in your chat. I appreciate that. Yeah, that has been the goal, I think, from the beginning, is that this was never intended as this is what you need to do. And there were some other questions in the Q&A that one of them mentioned the Peralta equity rubric. So one of the things that it's the CVC design rubric the current one does not have the equity Peralta rubric infused in that. As you know, going forward, the POCR rubric revision process going forward, the Chancellor's Office has asked us to infuse equity into that. So going forward, that will be it'll be a different rubric going forward. But for now, we're aligning to the current rubric, and different colleges have their own adoption practices around the equity rubric. So again, deferring to local practices is really critical here. This is not a one size fits all. So I think it's really important that we maintain that we honor and maintain our local decision-making processes. So that's the essential process for the pilot. Let's see, where am I set? So we have learned, it's been a very, very amazing journey. This whole process has been very amazing, and we have learned a lot in this initial go around. So one of the things that I think is very critical is that we're looking at the application criteria, and we're really we will be revising the application criteria to ensure the quality review badge is recent. So, we don't know that number yet, but my guess is within 3 to 4 years at the max age, but that's something that we would decide at some point. But that's an important element. How recent is the quality review badge? I think the other application criteria that's being revised is the submission of one module for initial review. So in applying, you would also submit one module for review. And another application criteria is that they be OER based from the beginning, and that all the content should be appropriately CC licensed and accessible. So that's the application criteria. And there should be no extra costs, and that it's 16-week asynchronous already, and that the course author is willing to remove identifying elements from the course and or create generic course elements if it's highly personalized. So these are some of the application criteria that we're revising based on our experiences and feedback from this initial go around. And another lesson that we learned was, that there will be a template going forward, that there will be a format within to fit the course that we're getting, so that they become a little more standardized in their approach, not necessarily their approach, but in how they look and feel. And then that there will be an instructor guide created along with the plug and play course. So the course author will also have that responsibility to do that. And it could be authors or authors, singular or plural, going forward. Checkpoint reviews, those we're going to revise those to be based in specific module review, which includes along the way accessibility and UDL review and guidance. So I think it's always an interesting process, when you start with a course, as we all know, sometimes backwards designing it or working from the backward forward, there are things that get, that leave, that come, that get replaced, and they have to be reviewed, they have to be thought about again, and they have to be integrated into the overall flow of the course. So along the way, those checkpoint reviews will help to sort of keep that flow more unified and more standard. And then finally, they will undergo a formal accessibility review. That's some of the lessons that were learned from this initial pilot.
Marilena, before we go on,
Sure.
I want to just go back to this slide and just make sure that And I may not have been paying attention when you were on the slide. Sorry, I was
That's
reading the chat. But I want to make sure that we highlight that we do have a place in our CVC website, CVC at One site for plug and play, and you can see the list of adoptable courses there, and you can see the instructions of how to access those courses. So that information is all there for you and for everyone to see. And then I also want to just say that, Jim, I also appreciate your comment on that chat that, that messaging is really important. And I think that after, the initial messaging went out, we realized like, oh, I don't think we were really clear about the intent, but truly the intent has always been like, this is to fill a specific gap. Because that's what we heard from, our system that, I think we've all been in the different roles that we play at our colleges. Some may be more familiar with this than others, where there's a last minute hire or like a last minute class has been created and there is no instructor that has taught that class before online to teach it. That was the intent and it continues to be the intent to fill that gap. So, I don't think we can say that enough, but anyhow,
Can I just add anecdotal? So as a co-chair in the political science department at Saddleback, we just hired 2 part-time political science faculty who are they're PhD students at UCI. So when I told them about this project, they were very excited. And I made it clear that, hey, this is something that you would have to go in and add what you want to add, but it just gives you like a really good starting point if you've never taught online. So it was really exciting to hear their excitement of getting their hands on a course like that. And I know with my experience when I was a PhD student, I wish I had something like that because I didn't have any training. Like when you're in the research field, you're just thrown into teaching sometimes. So I just wanted to add that little anecdotal. So thank you guys.
Okay, I do see a lot of questions in the Q&A. Please keep putting those in there. We will answer them either live or somebody will type in the answer. I do want to continue with our presentation, but please, we will make sure to answer all of your questions before the end. So Maria Elena, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but are we good for Ryan to continue?
Yes,
right.
unless Garrick, unless there are some questions that you would like to answer live going forward, or if not, we can just move forward.
Yeah, I can answer a couple of them right now. So to Marie's question around how are faculty reviewers selected moving forward, in this instance, Comm Studies, but for any of these, this was one of the lessons learned was regarding just a discipline review. So again, this was a pilot project. So these were our first courses that we ever tried to do. And as this slide shows with the lessons learned, we learned so much through this process. So should recruitment be narrowed to just a faculty member with a badged course in that discipline? Great idea for a pilot project. Does that sustain moving forward for every discipline? Not necessarily, because you're obviously excluding a whole bunch of people that might have great input into a course. So looking at how we can do that for these review panels, for faculty reviewers, what criteria would we ask for? And you'll see in a bit, there will be a slide for other people to sign up, basically, to be a part of this process moving forward. Because at the end of the day, we want as many people involved in this as possible to support the best course build possible. So regarding not just Comm Studies, but for any of these disciplines, not just the ones that we have that went live recently, but moving forward, we will have that same call to make sure we get as many people in as possible. I will say to start this process, we wanted to ensure that we understood that the backbone of the project management to make sure we can bring this to scale. And so by doing that, we had to keep the group small to make sure the processes worked. Within that, we identified pinch points where we can't keep it as small moving forward. In halfway through, we ended up partnering with ASCCC OERI to make sure to start looking at what OER are we using. Is this the most widely one used in the field? Is it not the most widely one used in the field? What recommendations do you have as OERI? So that was one of the considerations. Accessibility. So we brought in two outside accessibility experts from within our system, but from outside of CVC to help us work with these faculty to support the accessibility components of these courses because these are going to be released to a larger audience. And in terms of the question regarding protection of faculty's academic freedom, that is really why this is the hard balance between these. That's really the hard question in terms of how much content do we produce and how much content do we not put into a course, because you do have academic freedom within the content of that course, and you can manipulate the content to whatever you want it to be. I know last year at ASCCC Academic Academy, myself and Anwar presented on early knowledge of the plug and play program and what we saw. And one of the questions was, well, do I have to use the curriculum as it's currently built? You do not have to use the curriculum in any way, shape, or form as it is currently built. And matter of fact, I actually had a music faculty who already adopted one of these courses, deleted all of the content out of there just because they wanted a template. They wanted a model template that they could use for a course. So what does the heading structure look like? How many assignments do I do? How many discussions do I do? So for many of us, if you're an experienced instructor, you kind of know what that balance looks like in your course. If you don't have an instructional designer on your campus or an overly involved DE coordinator, you might not know the answer to that. And so that's what the situation this faculty member was in, was they just wanted to see what a course looked like. And so they adopted one of these courses late last week. And with that adoption, just deleted all of the content out of there. So there's other uses beyond just these disciplines. And that is something, I don't think we have it listed on this slide, but that's something as a team we talked about actually yesterday, was just developing a template. So stripping out all of the actual content regarding any discipline specific information and just providing a quality template that could be used. So that's already something we're thinking about. So again, these questions are excellent. Keep them coming. But I do want to say we're learning just as much as you all are with this process as we're moving forward with it. So if it seems like, some of these answers might not be figured out yet, you're 100% right. We haven't figured out all of the answers for this program yet, but that is why this was a 6-course pilot. We've learned so much, as this slide shares, in lessons learned, and we're continuing to learn so much more as we move forward. So with that, Maria Elena, I'll turn it back over to you, and I'll continue to answer questions as they come in to the best of my ability. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Garrick. Well, that's the end of our sort of lessons learned, but now I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to share his experience in this project.
Thank you, Maria Elena. Yeah, so a couple key points that I think I can share out on. First one, full transparency. I really was inspired by Plug and Play's mission, really POCR's mission in general. I'm a little bit of a poker groupie, for full transparency. It really goes all the way back to maybe like 2020, 2021 for me, when I aligned my first 2 courses in English. I went on to take the poker reviewer training, and in the last like 4 years or so, I've reviewed another 30 courses, give or take. This plug and play course marks the 3rd course now that I've aligned. So when I saw that call out go out to the system back in the fall, boy, I don't even think I read the full email. I wrote back and I said, yeah, sign me up. So I was very excited when Sochi and Maria Elena reached out and said, sure, yeah, I think there's alignment here. I think that you could be a candidate for this pilot. And they sort of filled me in on the next steps and the details of what plug and play would entail. And I think to what Jim Julius had mentioned about maybe some sort of miscommunication and what have you, it's very funny because I was in this pilot. Sochi, to what you had said earlier, yeah, that's always what the mission had seemed like to me, being on the inside, is like, how do we help new hires? How do we help emergency hiring situations, that kind of thing. And really that very much spoke to me because I think back to 2016 when I started teaching in the community college system. I was So overwhelmed. Oh my gosh. I was teaching at 3 institutions, very classic adjunct experience, and was not really getting as much support as I think I needed at the time, and didn't have as much time in the day as I think I needed at the time. The idea that I could have had a template, quality template, to sort of save some effort that I could then maybe feed back into my students, feed back into really my own time, my own life at home. Um, wow, it seemed like a no-brainer. But something that did, I think, really take a lot of intellectual work on my part was really the challenge of what we had to do, this plug and play business. So yeah, there was this question of taking my name out of the course, taking my college affiliation out of the course. But to my mind, really the largest challenge was one of adoptability and trying to answer this question of, if we build it, will they come, right? Or will they adopt anyway? And thinking about how long it takes to make a course, I wanted to be really intentional in trying to answer that question, which is what sort of leads you to those second 2 bullet points. And I'll tackle that third bullet point first. So I took a couple different strategies in terms of separating myself from the course. Probably the biggest one and one of the most consequential is that I started a completely new course for this. It's not to say that I wasn't pulling information from the aligned critical thinking course that I was modeling this plug and play after, but they were two separate pots. I did not import anything. I did not modify anything. I had pot A, I had pot B, and never the two shall touch. And I found that to be tremendously helpful. It might sound like a lot of extra work, but in my mind, the real work would have been the granular level of detail needed to do those line by line edits, um, stripping information, changing things. I'll get more into that in just a moment. Something else that I did, though, in terms of separating myself from the course, is I started to think about audience. I know, classic English instructor move, thinking about audience for a moment. But if this is a course that could be adopted by other English instructors across the state, then I have to start thinking both about those instructors, but also their students. And their students are not my students. I know what works for me in my classroom, but I don't know what works for a classroom in Berkeley or Fresno or places I've never heard of. And so I sort of intentionally sat down and tried to get rid of some of those zany Ryan assignments. It hurt me a little bit, but again, two pots. I had the pot with my assignments, and then I had sort of the, you don't want to call it generic because that has such a negative connotation, but sort of the maybe beginner really pot of English assignments that I think we all started out, if you're an English instructor, using in your course before you developed a course that really reflected your values as an English instructor. If you were at a webinar that I hosted earlier in the month, Scroll Less, Talk More, Humanizing the Online Learning Experience, then you have a better idea of what I'm talking about when I say zany online Ryan assignments. I have a whole series of elaborate pronto assignments that I send my students through. But just to give you a sense of how challenging this was to separate myself from the course, not all institutions even have pronto. And so as I was building this course, I had to sit down and think, well, if an instructor is not going to have that tool, okay, cool, then I need to reconsider everything. Like, I need to really start over, which was again why it made more sense in my mind to start with a new shell versus importing and modifying as I went. One other strategy that I considered for separating myself from the course was to take a look at the instructions for some of the assessments that I did keep. I'm thinking primarily about essays. I have two graduate degrees. I have a master's in English. I also have another master's in creative writing. And having that dual degree background really informs the work that I do in the classroom. But thinking about audience again for a second, I don't think it's right to assume that every instructor who adopts this course is going to have that same background. Or even if they do, that they're going to have the same lived experiences that inform what my classroom looks like 9 years into being an English instructor. So I wanted to take a step back, again, go back to the basics, go back to sort of beginning English. What did that look like for me 9 years ago when I started teaching? And so instead of the sort of wonky, zany things I was doing, I went to things like compare and contrast and cause and effect, and studying how systemic factors affect educational opportunities for students, which felt like accessible topics that all students and all faculty teaching those students would have a really easy time just like sliding into and adapting as they saw fit. But sort of digging into that for just a moment, I'll tackle that last bullet point. How did I make space for other instructors to come in here and play, to sort of play into the terminology, poker plug and play for just a moment? Um, there were a couple things that I did. One of them, intentional, unintentional. I have a course design preference for a very minimalist feel, a minimalist style. Anybody who downloads my course will see that um don't want to say there's not a lot there because there is, but it is not text heavy. That's a very intentional approach for students because I want to try to reduce cognitive load, but that's also an intentional approach for faculty because when you download this course and you decide you're going to start making some changes, it should not be very difficult for you to keep track of what you need to change. If you download this course and there is a monster long page where you need to track line 1, line 2, and line 3 and what needs to change on each line, then why would you adopt that course? That's going to be really challenging to change. Another strategy that I took to make space for other instructors to play is I actually leveraged 18 different OER resources for the lecture content in my course. You might be thinking, wow, why 18? Because I didn't want the course to be so leveraged in just one source that if you didn't like it, you were stuck. If you're digging into my course and you decide that you don't like week 3's lecture content, awesome, pivot away. Maybe just delete all of week 3. Because as Sochi was saying earlier, we're not all on 16-week calendars. That's fine. You should not have any difficulty finding new content and weaving it into what's already there. And then maybe one final thing that I want to highlight would be in the first unpublished module of this course, but it's also available in the files. And I think actually that Maria Elena highlighted it in some of the lessons learned. I wrote a little course guide with some tips and tricks for how to easily make broad, comprehensive changes in the course. I figured this thing's massive. It's 16 weeks long. It would take a very long time to read it, absorb it, and then figure out how to change it. So, what if I, as the person who created it, could sort of show you how to save time changing it and like tweaking things? So I pointed out, oh, here you can just change this. And over here, if you want to change that, like here's the fastest way to do that. The document is, I want to say maybe 3-4 pages long, something like that, and is like a guidebook for making it a completely different, probably much better course. So that's my little pitch. That's my little perspective on my time in Poker Plug and Play. I really enjoyed working with Sochi and Maria Elena.
I have to say, Ryan, that your experience taught us probably the majority of our lessons in terms of how we needed to move forward. It's very important. So hearing you talk about this process to me emphasizes the lessons the lessons that we learned going forward. What do we need to
Thank
do?
you.
What do we need? How do we need to structure this? What needs to be present in there? What guidance do we need? I think those are super important. And so thank you for sharing that. I also really appreciated your use of plug and play in high and emphasizing the play element as opposed to what
Awesome.
our traditional understanding of plug and play is. You plug it in and the camera works. So
Yeah.
it's like, but it's no, you plug it in and then you get to play. And so I really appreciate that element of it. And I know titles can be tricky and funny, and as writers, we're all, I mean, the three of us are English majors, creative
Mm.
writers in some way, and so struggling with titles is always a challenge. But I do like the play aspect and making space for that. So I appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, so um, if we move to slide number 9, the current courses that are available are the Critical Thinking and Writing, the C1001, a C1000, a COM C1000, and the STAT C1000. And the other two are still in development. And you can see that the next wave will be sort of the next CCN wave. And that will be the art history, the econs, um, other literature, other English courses, and the 2 history courses. And Sochi, if you want to take it away,
Oh, yes,
or
I do.
me, I guess I can do the next one. That's fine too.
So on this slide, I just wanted to emphasize that we are moving forward. We are continuing with this project. And as you can see, the next courses are aligned with the CCN releases. I know that there's 2 phases. There's a lot of courses with CCN, so we're going to start with these. And then next, I've gotten a few questions. There's been a few questions about how, can I be part of this if I have a course that's already badged. We do have, it's just a Google form, but that's like our initial application. If you're interested, feel free to scan that code. And if all works well, I did test it. It should take you to a Google form that you can fill out with just, some general information. And then when we get ready to start on that, one of us will, contact you about the next steps. So we are looking to move forward with this project. All right. So now it's time for questions. So there are still some questions that we haven't answered. We've all been trying to answer them as we go. Let's see. And Garrick and Marilena, feel free to unmute yourselves and
Oh,
tackle
I just
some of
wanted to
these.
say thank you, Jennifer. You're right. I love that you said, and thank you for reinforcing that idea that plug and play is not turnkey necessarily. It really is. Um, uh, uh, yeah, it's not turnkey. And if so, we would call it a turnkey course, I suppose, if we wanted to, but we're not. We're calling it a plug and play, which, even if you plug it in, sometimes you have to go in and adjust your settings, and you got to go in and, reconfigure some things. So it's never really plug and play. But I do value the play element in this title. So thanks, Jennifer, for that. But let's go to other questions.
I can answer Wendy's question in the chat. Wendy mentioned that I didn't want to make this public, but I wish the emphasis on emergency gap filling was made more clear in the initial emails. Wendy, as you can imagine, with a lot of those memos that were sent out and information sharing, we are doing our best to navigate that space for just trying to get as much information out as possible. This is part of that information sharing element, is having conversations like this, and we will continue to have conversations like this. Like I said, Anwar and I presented in the spring semester at ASCCC Academic Academy, talking about this. So the more we talk about this, I think more and more we'll start to shift that conversation from a lot of the emails that I've received personally from people around our field were, why are we standardizing curriculum statewide? And really That's what we're trying to get away from, is people thinking that, oh, this is the curriculum that I have to use. Like I said, Anwar and I experienced that question in the springtime. Oh, why do I have to use all of this content for COM C1000? And the answer is you don't have to use any of it for COM C1000. You don't have to use any of these courses to begin with. These are a completely optional resource that were designed to support the field. How you use them is completely up to you. And one of the questions in the chat relates to that, from an anonymous attendee. Probably tenured faculty may lead the plug and play creation process. Support your colleagues. That's really what this whole plug and play process is about, is supporting your colleagues. And when I worked at Merced College, a lot of times we'd have a new faculty member that starts, and in their department, they might not have a well-built online course ready to go that could be shared with a new faculty member so they can start teaching on Monday. And so really that's what Plug and Play is trying to assist with. If you have colleagues in your department that already have that course that's ready to share, awesome. That is amazing. But being that we have 116 colleges across our system, this picture looks much different at each college. And so we have to remember, your college might have well-built shells ready to share, ready to go, fully aligned, that you hand off to your new faculty on a golden platter. Or maybe it's a tenured faculty who has never taught a course before within their department. And so it's their first time teaching it, even though they've been an instructor for 10, 15 years. They still are looking for some sort of template to utilize. And so that's really what Plug and Play is designed to do, is to help with that. These aren't the end answer in terms of what a course should be. Think about this as that crutch just to get you over that initial step, that initial hurdle, just to get you moving in the right path. I've been in that situation where I had to build a course in 4 days. And it was my first time logging into that learning management system. And well, what do I do? How do I even, what is a module? I don't even understand what a module is in this learning management system. And so I just want to put all of that out there, because with 116 colleges, this picture could look much different at many of our colleges. And so that is really, you might be listening to all of this right now saying, we already have this at our college. We already have that resource. Why are we even talking about this? Because statewide, not everybody has the same resources across our system. And so this is trying to give that opportunity to have additional resources across our system. So think of it as that it is another resource in your toolbox of all the things you can use, that is separate from Canvas Commons. There are also other courses that faculty members have shared in Canvas Commons that are also adoptable. And so we're just trying to provide an additional resource to support faculty statewide. That's really the whole intent at the end of the day.
So there's some other questions. Jim talked about feedback on the courses, and I know, Garrick, that we had all talked about our process going forward, and you talked about discipline review and different kinds of things that we're thinking about strategizing going forward. So Jim, definitely we're thinking about the systematic approach to gather that feedback. And so thank you for that question. And if Garrick, if you have more on that, go ahead and answer, but or go ahead and chime in. There was a question from Cynthia Hamlet about non CCN or a common CID course, and it's an ASL course. Do you see that in the chat? And would a course like this have to wait?
So I'll go ahead and answer that. So for now, we are focusing on CCN courses. As we said with our lessons learned, when we initially started talking about this, when you make initial plans, you're like, oh yeah, this will be no big deal. And it's a big deal. It's a lot more than, what we anticipated, which is fine. Like, we're not, backing out from the work. We're more than happy to continue. We truly are very passionate about this project. But for now, we are going to continue just with the CCN courses, because we do have, a limited team, limited funding. There are limits to what this team can do, but we do, the hope and the goal is to continue. So, someday we may, have the bandwidth to look at other courses to create, other plug and play courses that are not CCN courses, or maybe even CID. Just the CID is super helpful because that is something that, most of the colleges could easily adopt. And with that, I'll answer. There was a CID question in here. I don't know if it was already answered, or a question about course outlines. So what we did for these templates is we focus on the CID course outline of record. So that's how we had the plug and play authors, adapt their course to this project. I'll answer the question. I'm taking the easy one, sorry, about payment. There is compensation for this work that, so if you're interested, go ahead and apply, but there is some compensation. Let's see.
I'll just respond because I see Jim and Kelly both had similar conversations, and Maria Elena, you alluded to this, and I was trying to catch up on all of them. Regarding feedback, Jim, you're spot on. We're doing our best, as this is a new program that was released a couple weeks ago. We're doing our best to try to figure out those communication methods. So right now, since we don't have a tool or a survey to collect that feedback immediately, support at cvc.edu is the best avenue. And Kelly, I see you said that you've sent in feedback, and I didn't care about that because it was already badged. We absolutely do care about that feedback. As you can imagine, we have received a lot of emails on this project, good and bad. And so our team is reviewing every one of those. We have additional spreadsheets built with each course and the comments that come in. And so in real time, we can't necessarily make modifications because I am the only full-time CVC at one staff person. So we are doing our best to accommodate as much as we can. But in the meantime, please keep sending it to support@cvc.edu because we're able to file that. And like I said, we're putting all of those comments on a spreadsheet to build those out so we can make modifications in the future. The point of these are not to be static courses that we never touch again. The point is to iterate and modify. Really, with this pilot project, like I said earlier, the point was to build the infrastructure around what a process looks like. So how do we get these courses from initial intake? How do we rebuild them? As Ryan mentioned, how do we strip that faculty member out of it so it's more shareable? And then how do we help that faculty build themselves back into that new adoptable course? So what does that process look like? So really, we are in the very early stages of this project. So the more feedback, the better. Please keep sending it in. We will come up with new methods to the madness in terms of submitting feedback, in terms of review. All of that will come with time, but really we're just trying to build that initial infrastructure right now. So I will say, is this a perfect process? It isn't. It isn't at all. And we've learned so much as we're building this out. Do we hope by the time we get 2 or 3 years into this process, it's clean and it's user friendly and it meets the needs of what people are requesting? Absolutely. That is the whole goal. And sessions like this, again, are that opportunity for us to hear a lot of that feedback, to give information that we have, because as we know through static emails, a lot of times the meaning can get misconstrued. And so really, again, we are just trying to support the system with these. And I will say, based on the conversations, this is what I alluded to at the beginning, it's very difficult to do a project like this at large scale because there are so many different pieces and elements that come into play. And so there's a reason why there's not a program that currently exists that has adoptable courses. And you are seeing them in real time of why this is so difficult. Because how do you incorporate the correct OER? How do you create build out the right course? And so
and honestly, Garrick, is there such a thing as a correct OER? I think people keep talking about academic freedom, and I think that whatever choice was made, that those are the choices made. And I'm not going to tell you no, and you can choose another one. So that's part of that whole process. So sorry, Garrick, I just had to say that. But I just wanted to kind of say to Jim and some other comments about it, the instructor guides. And that was one of the major lessons that we learned, is that that every course has a different sort of instructor guide because the instructor was either doing it along the way or maybe did it after the fact because we said, oh, you should do that. So a lot of the standardization process and things that we know we need to have going forward, yeah, instructor guides, absolutely. And are these static courses? No. Will they get updated and changed? We surely hope so. But yeah.
And a little more on that instructor guide, I will share with everyone. That's one of the things that we hadn't planned on.
Yeah.
When we started this process, we didn't plan. And I think it was Ryan
Yeah.
that was like, you know what, I'm starting like this, document and putting these like things that are specific to this course. And that's when we're like, oh, we probably should do that for every course, but it's just one of the big lessons learned. So yeah, definitely. Thank you for those comments on, updating that stats instructor guide. We'll do that as quickly as we can, but we also have like all these other projects going on in the meantime. So we truly are, taking your comments in through our support tickets and, adjusting our process for future, but also intend to go back and, make these modifications on the courses that already exist. And speaking of the stats class, there was a comment about, that there are a variety of topics and software, that can be used to teach the specific course. So I'm going to let Marilena answer the question about the software, but what I do want to say is this question leads to what kind of we've been talking about, how each one of us can teach the same course in so many different ways. And that's why, using the CID course outline of record is really important to the creation of these courses, because it like makes sure that, we have these objectives to meet, and we want to make sure that the course meets those objectives, but every one of us would create a totally different course. And that's the beauty of academic freedom. So in the case of these plug and play courses, the goal behind them is, the course has used this OER. There are these assignments built, et cetera, with the end result that it meets this core. And then, the person that adopts it can use it as is or can change things around. But Marilena, will you answer about the software? Because do you know what happened with the stats class? And
I believe it's My Open Math.
Yeah.
My Open Math. So
I think it is.
Yeah, it's My Open Math. I mean, again, the discipline expert is the course author. They're the ones who are making the decisions about the content, and our guidance was to make sure that does it meet this course design rubric? Is it aligned? Does it have what it needs at an essential level? And is there and have we learned lessons from that? Absolutely, we have. So, and we're taking those lessons to heart, and we're taking all of your comments to heart also. So we do appreciate all of the insight. One of the things that I'm actually excited about, and Garrick mentioned the idea of partnerships or how we are partnered. And, just because there is one selected OER, I would love to see us partner with, more strongly with the OERI and develop a list of potential other textbooks that are OER that could be used if even if this one is the main one that's being used to build the course. If you didn't like that textbook, here's some other ones that you might choose from. So kind of like a curated library that's built into the course also. If there's an instructor guide, then maybe an additional optional options for other OER if you don't like the text that's being used, because all of us have been in that position where we have been assigned a course. I was assigned my very first semester a course that already had a textbook published, bought. The instructor just didn't want to teach the course. I was assigned to the class. I got the textbook. I'm like, hate this textbook, but I had to use it. So that first semester. After that, I didn't use it anymore. But sometimes if you get something, you're able to change it after you kind of live with it for a while, and then build it to your own feelings and your own personality.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Marilena, Sochi, Ryan, Garrick, everyone. for being here and listening in. This is, of course, like we said, an amazing project, and we're here to listen, learn, and take it back and continue to improve, to continue to support the system and faculty and students. So
Anwar,
again, we want to thank you. I'm
really
sorry.
quickly, so sorry to interrupt you, Anwar. Really quickly, I just want to remind people, if you have not been able to access the courses, don't hesitate to send a message to support@cvc.edu, and I will be sure to give you the instructions for your Canvas admin to add the CCC Consortium Commons to your Commons, because these are not posted in Canvas Public Commons. So I just want to put that out there. So, Anwar, sorry.
Oh, no, that's great. So before you go, I dropped the survey in the chat. Please do fill it out. We read them diligently, and we take your feedback to heart and are always working to improve. And of course, if you encounter any issues, feel free to reach out to support@cvc.edu. We also encourage you to explore our other webinars. We have 2 more webinars for fall session. So please explore those. And we also encourage you to review past webinars that are posted on our website. I will drop the link to those in a minute. Lastly, the recordings of this webinar will also be posted on the CVC website. So thank you all so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the California beautiful weather. Take care, everyone. I'm going to just save the chat.
Oh, good. Thank you. Should we shift to the green room?